Welcome back to the Archive Network. Aurelius here, with Malik, curators of the Treaty Archive. We left Concordat of Worms last time at the Concordat's legacy was immediate and profound. Today we pick up where we left off. Power, faith, and control. These were the currencies at stake as the Concordat of Worms was signed. Every word in the treaty redefined who ruled and who served. It's fascinating to think how a piece of parchment could bear such weight. The Concordat, signed on September 23rd, 1122, was a culmination of decades of bitter struggle.
But, Aurelius, we must remember that the struggle was not just political. It was deeply personal for everyone involved. The investiture controversy wasn't merely a clash for power. It was about the very soul of Christendom. Popes and emperors were not just figures on a chessboard. They were real people, driven by their convictions and beliefs. Some believed they were fighting for God's will, while others felt the weight of their communities on their shoulders. The stakes were incredibly high.
You're right about the personal stakes involved in this conflict. But we must remember that the Concordat was ultimately a calculated compromise. Pope Callixtus II came out on top, securing the right to invest bishops with spiritual authority. This act didn't just reshape the relationship between church and state. It ensured that spiritual matters remained firmly in the hands of the papacy, allowing it to wield significant influence over both governance and the hearts of the people.
But let's not overlook what that victory meant for the bishops themselves. They were not just spiritual leaders but also secular rulers. By controlling their spiritual authority, the Church also took control of vast territories and wealth. This was a triumph for the papacy, but it also complicated the loyalties of bishops caught between two powers.
The bishops found themselves in a tricky spot, balancing their loyalties to both the Church and the Emperor. But Emperor Henry V didn't walk away from Worms without a victory. The Concordat granted him the authority to invest bishops with the scepter, a move that solidified his influence. It wasn't just about faith anymore. It was about power. By tying bishops to his reign, he ensured their loyalty through more than just spiritual means. Power dynamics like these shape history.
Aurelius, you refer to this as a balance. But what about the underlying tensions? The Concordat did not erase the rivalry between church and state. Just because both sides had something to gain doesn't mean they were on equal footing. The Church may have gained spiritual authority, but the emperor still wielded significant control over temporal matters.
You're not wrong about the tensions. Yet this treaty addressed the election of bishops and abbots, ensuring that appointments would occur with transparency. No longer would these positions be filled through brute force or secrecy. Both church and state had a say, which was an essential step toward curbing the abuses of simony and bribery.
But did it really change anything? Just because imperial representatives showed up during bishop elections doesn't mean everything's above board. It just shifts the power dynamics. The old ways of political maneuvering still linger, like ghosts in the hallways, influencing decisions behind closed doors. Sure, this treaty might have set a new precedent, but it didn't wipe out the corruption. Real people are still affected by these games, and their lives are often collateral damage in the grand scheme.
Fair point. The Concordat certainly addressed financial issues as well. We see the emperor relinquishing his claim to revenues from vacant bishoprics, which was no small gesture. This significant economic concession was designed to curb the kind of prolonged political maneuvering that can suffocate a realm. By ensuring that church wealth served spiritual interests rather than royal ambitions, the Concordat aimed to realign priorities. It's a reminder that even in the grand machinery of empires, practical solutions often emerge to maintain stability.
Exactly. This was about more than just authority. It was about the very resources that fueled both powers. By removing the incentive for imperial interference, the Concordat attempted to strike at the heart of corruption. But we know that power dynamics are never so simple. The emperor could still find ways to exert influence over church affairs.
The Concordat's terms were public and unequivocal. It was a deliberate move to avoid the pitfalls of secret clauses that had marred previous agreements. Witnessed and ratified by both church and imperial officials, the solemnity of the ceremony in Worms marked a significant shift in medieval governance. Ink and parchment, rather than swords and flames, sealed this pact.
And yet, the legacy of this Concordat stretched far beyond its immediate context. It set a precedent for church-state relations across Europe. The model of shared authority influenced later treaties and legal systems, making compromise a necessary foundation for stability. However, the very tensions it sought to resolve simmered beneath the surface, waiting for the next opportunity to erupt.
The ink is dry, and the consequences of the treaty begin to unfold. For a time the balance held, but we must ask ourselves, will this fragile equilibrium endure? History shows us that empires often dance on a knife's edge, toying with power and faith. Yet, the underlying rivalries never truly disappear. They simmer beneath the surface, waiting for a moment to resurface. We must stay vigilant. After all, the past teaches us that peace can be just as volatile as war.
That's where we leave it this time. Concordat of Worms continues. The story isn't finished yet. Find the full series on the Treaty Archive, part of the Archive Network. We'll be back with the next chapter.